The chandeliers sparkled, the silver was polished, and the seating charts were locked until an order came down that shattered the illusion. Just 7 minutes before the grand state dinner was set to begin, a private royal command reached the palace staff. Timothy Lawrence's entire family was to be removed from the guest list. Panic erupted behind closed doors. What triggered Princess Anne to make such a bold public move against her own husband's family? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Inside the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, the mood had been one of regal precision. Ambassadors, diplomats, and foreign dignitaries were already on their way. Staff rehearsed every movement, but then chaos. A single royal aide, visibly pale, rushed to the senior protocol officer with an envelope bearing Anne's crest. Inside it, the shocking directive: every member of Timothy Lawrence's family was to be discreetly removed from the seating plan. The instruction came with no explanation, only a curt insistence that it was non-negotiable. In the rigid hierarchy of the royal household, when a royal commands, compliance is instant, especially when that royal is Anne. Behind the scenes, the timing was devastating. 7 minutes offered no room for diplomacy. Protocol was shredded. Seating charts were physically redrawn while the first carriages were pulling in. Wine pairings had to be shifted, toasts rewritten. 2 names vanished from the guest list: Timothy's sister and nephew, both set to dine alongside members of the Prime Minister's delegation. Their sudden absence would not go unnoticed, and in royal circles, omissions are louder than words. The emotional tremors didn't stop at the Logistical. Sir Timothy Laurence, usually composed and unbothered by royal formalities, was said to have stormed out of the private study after receiving word. Staff reported the slam of a heavy oak door and the sound of shattered glass moments later. No words were spoken publicly, no statement was issued, but the message was crystal clear. Princess Anne had drawn a line in the sand, and not just a line, an unspoken declaration of dominance, one that threatened to upend their marriage in full public view. Was this sudden move triggered by a last-minute discovery? Or had the decision been simmering behind Anne's unreadable gaze for weeks? Rumours swirled among staff that Anne had delivered an ultimatum to the palace earlier that day, with 3 handwritten lines: security, loyalty, final. No one knew what it meant, but everyone knew better than to question it. This wasn't just a matter of etiquette. It was war strategy disguised as diplomacy. Yet the deeper question remained: why now? Why sabotage a state dinner tied to international negotiations over trade, alliances, and image? Why target her own husband's family in a moment meant to represent unity? Whispers began circulating among palace insiders. This wasn't about protocol, it was personal. Sir Anne had discovered something she couldn't ignore. Others hinted at old wounds resurfacing, a feud buried under decades of cold civility. But the truth was more tangled, more devastating. But what could drive the most duty-bound royal to publicly humiliate her husband's family? The answer lies in a hidden web of betrayal that began years before the dinner even existed. Behind the royal formality and perfectly poised appearances lies a marriage that has silently endured fractures no press ever caught. For years, Princess Anne and Sir Timothy Lawrence presented an unshakable front, yet inside Clarence House, the tension simmered. Did a long-standing Cold War between Anne and Timothy's extended family finally reach its breaking point? The truth is, what looked like stoic unity to the public was quietly unraveling behind palace walls. While Anne remained the face of unwavering duty, those closest to the couple began to notice subtle but telling cracks. Whispers of closed-door arguments, changed travel schedules, and long silences during family engagements began to paint a different picture. Insiders noted that Anne's patience, always limited, had grown visibly thin around Timothy's relatives, especially during key royal milestones. The tipping point wasn't loud, but it was persistent. And it came in the form of quiet offences too subtle for headlines, but too consistent to ignore. Those close to Anne described her growing discomfort with the behaviour of Timothy's sister, whose sharp tongue and off-handed remarks reportedly clashed with Anne's unspoken code of royal restraint. At a garden party months before the state dinner, a single overheard comment, one that hinted Anne was more Mountbatten than Windsor, and not in a good way, left aides stunned. Anne said nothing. But the look she gave, according to one witness, could have frozen Buckingham's fountains. That moment didn't start the fire, it confirmed its existence. Anne, the monarchy's most disciplined pillar, was raised never to flinch. But beneath her famously unreadable expression, pride and pain clashed violently. Her pride in her lineage, in her role, in her unbreakable loyalty to crown and country, had come under siege not from enemies or public scrutiny, but from within her own family unit. Timothy, ever diplomatic, tried to mediate, but in doing so, he chose neutrality in a palace that demanded allegiance. His refusal to publicly rebuke his sister sent a message Anne could no longer ignore. She would always be second to his past and his family. The Queen's final days only deepened the divide. As Anne sat vigil by her mother's bedside, Timothy reportedly delayed his arrival by a day to escort his own family to Balmoral. To Anne, this wasn't just a scheduling conflict, it was a symbolic betrayal. In the last hours of the Queen's life, when unity mattered more than ever, the man who had vowed to stand beside her placed hers first. That decision, sources claim, wasn't forgiven. It was noted, stored, and sealed in the vault of Anne's silent memory. From then on, the distance was no longer emotional, it was strategic. Timothy remained present, but excluded. Anne began leaning more on her children, her brother Charles, and quietly on her own sense of isolation as a source of strength. The dinner was not the beginning of the fallout. It was simply the moment the world saw it bleed into daylight. The moment Anne stopped pretending. But this wasn't just about domestic tension, it spiraled into a full-blown political concern, one that made the state dinner an explosive battleground. Weeks before the state dinner, an internal palace intelligence briefing circulated quietly among the most senior royals. The report was not meant for public eyes. Inside were allegations that certain members of Timothy Laurence's family had problematic foreign ties. Could Anne's decision have been less personal and more a matter of national security? The file was slim, yet heavy with consequence. It arrived in a plain envelope, slipped onto the desk of the Lord Chamberlain under the pretense of routine vetting. But this wasn't routine. A single name flagged connected to a Laurence cousin through business and linked, however distantly, to a consortium under surveillance by the UK's intelligence services. On its own, the detail could be dismissed as guilt by association. But with state dinners involving foreign diplomats, ambassadors, and international attention, even a whisper of impropriety becomes thunder in royal corridors. That night, Anne received a private briefing. She didn't flinch. She asked only one question. Anne, is there a risk to the crown? The answer wasn't yes. It wasn't no. It was silence, and that was enough. Whispers began to echo through the walls of St. James's and Clarence House. Royal aides, normally unshaken, began taking calls from Whitehall. Meetings were rescheduled, schedules reshuffled. The Laurence family, unaware, remained on the guest list. But Anne's demeanour changed. Aides reported she became ice-cold, more withdrawn, sharply focused, her temper short but controlled. This wasn't the reaction of a wounded wife. It was the posture of a commander preparing to act. And when it came to matters of loyalty, Anne had always placed the monarchy above everything else. The report, although classified, couldn't be fully contained. Rumours began to reach Charles. His concern wasn't emotional, it was strategic. Trade negotiations with a key Pacific ally were due to be finalised days after the dinner. The optics of having anyone even remotely entangled with a controversial entity seated beside international guests posed reputational risk not just to the family, but to the nation. Charles, in private, reportedly said, "We cannot afford another distraction. Not now." The timing was too delicate. One photograph, one unvetted guest, and years of diplomatic groundwork could collapse in a headline. Caught between loyalty and law, Anne made her move. She issued the directive herself. It didn't pass through communications, or even Charles. It came from her. Direct. Final. No explanation offered. It was said she handed the envelope to a senior aide and walked away without a word. For the palace, the command was as clear as a military order. And Timothy? He didn't learn of the decease ion from Anne. He heard it from a royal security officer, 20 minutes before the dinner. His response? Not anger, not outrage, but a chilling demand to see the security footage, to look each of the guards in the eye. When denied, he reportedly uttered just 3 words, "So this ends." But the surveillance footage told its own story. Timothy was seen pacing, jaw clenched, speaking in hushed tones to a senior security advisor. Whatever was said, it ended with him slamming his hand on the doorframe and leaving the corridor altogether. A man used to navigating the shadows of royal life had just been blindsided and humiliated by the very institution he had spent decades upholding. Even as Anne cited security protocol, the truth spiraled far beyond paper trails, straight into the realm of family betrayal. In a private room shielded from the royal corridors, Princess Anne reportedly stood firm as Timothy Laurence demanded an explanation. Raised voices, slamming doors, and a statement that would stun even the most seasoned courtiers. Your family jeopardizes the crown. Was this Anne drawing the line between royal blood and marital bonds? What was meant to be a brief, private exchange became a reckoning years in the making. Sources say Timothy had entered the room quietly, holding the official program of the state dinner with names now violently scratched out his family's names. He asked only one question, why? But the moment hung heavy with unsaid truths. Anne didn't offer pleasantries or apology. She cut straight through. The security concerns, the optics, the allegiances, they had all reached their boiling point. Your family puts the monarchy at risk, she repeated. Her voice low but shaking with finality. That one sentence shattered decades of restraint. Timothy, long accustomed to Anne's disciplined temperament, was stunned. For the first time in their marriage, he raised his voice not in fury, but in desperation. They are innocent, he shouted, voice breaking. They've done nothing wrong. But Anne didn't blink. Her silence wasn't indifference, it was resolve. To her, innocence was irrelevant if perception alone threatened the monarchy's stability. It wasn't about evidence, it was about the legacy she had fought to uphold. When the institution stands on the edge of global scrutiny, even shadows can burn the foundation. Those standing outside the door reported a sound not often heard within the palace furniture scraping, a muffled thud, and then silence. Not a silence of peace, but of exhaustion. Anne didn't argue. She didn't defend her decision. She simply turned, walked to the door, and before exiting said one sentence that left the room colder than before. You asked me to choose, Timothy. I did. Her departure wasn't dramatic, it was devastating. She didn't slam the door. She didn't look back, because for Anne, the decision was already made the moment that intelligence briefing reached her hands. In the hours that followed, staff were instructed to remove Timothy's name from post-dinner debriefings. He would not attend the planning session the next morning. He would not be present in follow-up photographs. It was a deliberate erasure, a recalibration of roles, though he remained her husband by title. In that moment, his influence within the palace machinery had been silently revoked. No statement was issued. No explanation was read. But the message was unmistakable. Anne had not only drawn the line, she had crossed it without hesitation. But Anne's choice triggered not just outrage, it awakened buried royal wounds, some stretching back decades into unspoken pain. To understand Anne's ruthlessness, we must revisit an older betrayal, one that changed the trajectory of her life. When Lord Mountbatten died, secrets died with him, or so it was believed, but his private notes reveal a shocking warning. Anne will face treachery not from her enemies, but from within. Could she have interpreted Timothy's family as part of that internal threat? Long before Anne became the indomitable force we know today, she was Mountbatten's protégé, the one he believed had the steel, discretion and legacy to hold the crown's moral centre when others faltered. Unlike her brothers, Anne didn't need royal favour to define her worth. She had Mountbatten's confidence. He taught her that loyalty could be lethal, and that those closest to you are often the ones with the sharpest knives. His mentorship wasn't filled with warmth, it was filled with warnings. And Anne listened. She memorized the signs, the behaviors, the quiet manipulations he insisted she learn to detect. His sudden death left a silence in her world that was never quite filled. but the journals he left behind, hidden in the deepest corner of Windsor's restricted archives, carried his final truths. Cryptic, coded, and deeply personal. In one entry, dated less than a year before his death, he wrote, "Anne has the blood for power, but not the appetite. She will be tested, not by war, not by the press, but by kin." It wasn't clear then what he meant, but to Anne that prophecy burned into her memory. Every time she was challenged by those within the family, or those who married into it, those words echoed. And as her marriage to Timothy matured, and his family gradually moved into spaces Anne considered sacred, guarded, and exclusively royal, something began to shift. It wasn't outright hostility, it was unease, a quiet sense that the invisible boundary between monarchy and civilian life was being crossed too easily. And Anne, taught by Mountbatten never to ignore a breach, began closing the doors one by one. The final straw may not have been a single event, but the accumulation of signs she had been conditioned to recognize. Offhand remarks by Timothy's sister about royal privilege, questions about private holdings at Balmoral, subtle interference in social invitations on the surface, they seemed trivial. But to Anne, they formed a pattern, and patterns, as Mountbatten had drilled into her, were never accidental. They were coded strategies, cloaked threats. To the outside world, Anne's decision at the dinner seemed harsh. But to her, it was the closing of a chapter written in the ink of her earliest fears. Even Anne's stoicism couldn't conceal the emotional undertow this decision carried. She wasn't just excising a perceived risk, she was severing ties that connected her to a life she no longer trusted. Mountbatten had once told her that true power lies in knowing when to let go, and in removing Timothy's family from her inner orbit, she wasn't merely punishing them, she was protecting herself from repeating the mistakes of royal history. It wasn't cruelty, it was survival. And in her world, the line between the two is often indistinguishable. But while Anne wrestled with ancestral shadows, Timothy's family wasn't going down without a fight. And what they revealed next flipped the narrative upside down. Just 48 hours after being banned from the royal dinner, a private letter allegedly written by Timothy's sister was leaked to the press. Its contents were brutal, unapologetic, and filled with personal accusations against Princess Anne. "You married into our family, not the other way around," she wrote. The royal walls trembled. The letter, addressed not just to Anne but to the institution that believes itself above humanity, was an emotional onslaught that hit the palace like a bomb. In sharp, unfiltered prose, Timothy's sister accused Anne of wielding her royal title like a weapon, cold, elitist, and detached. She claimed that Anne had, from the beginning, refused to acknowledge Timothy as a man with a family, a heart, and a life outside his royal service. In the harshest passages, she alleged that Anne viewed her husband's relatives as liabilities, not loved ones. The most damning line, "You didn't just exclude us from your table. You made it clear we were never welcome in your world," went viral within hours, quoted in headlines and dissected on every major network. The reaction from the public was explosive. Hashtags emerged overnight. Hashtag Team Anne and hashtag Team Laurence flooded social media. Some defended Anne's right to protect the monarchy with ruthless precision, praising her as the last true royal unshaken by scandal. Others branded her a relic of a cold dynasty, a symbol of everything the monarchy needed to shed in the modern era. Talk shows debated it, editorials dissected it, and through it all, Anne said nothing, no denial, no rebuttal, not a single statement. That silence, calculated and deliberate, became its own form of dominance. In an age obsessed with apologies and damage control, Anne's refusal to bow to narrative pressure only deepened her mythos. But inside the palace, the fallout was harder to contain. The Royal Communications Office scrambled to manage the narrative. They reached out to friendly press, attempted to shift the spotlight, and even considered releasing a pre-recorded interview featuring Anne from earlier that year, anything to soften her image. But every move felt reactive. They were behind the curve. The scandal wasn't just a family drama. It had spiraled into reputational warfare with implications far beyond personal embarrassment. Diplomats began to express quiet concerns. Invitations to joint events were suddenly under review. And worst of all, private donors, those who supported Anne's charities, began pulling back in quiet protest. Yet Anne remained unmoved. Those who know her well say she viewed the letter not as a betrayal, but as a confirmation that she had been right to act, that her instincts, honed over decades of palace politics and personal wounds, had once again protected the crown from vulnerability. But others inside the walls whispered differently. They saw the toll, the tightened jaw, the longer silences, the way she sat alone at meetings once filled with Timothy's presence. She may have won the battle, but at a cost only she would carry. But just when the scandal seemed uncontrollable, another unexpected voice entered the fray, and this time it was from the future of the monarchy itself. Prince William, known for rarely engaging in family disputes, made a calculated move. At a private palace gathering, he reportedly told Anne, "We must protect our legacy even from ourselves." Was this a warning, a rebuke, or a quiet alignment with the crown's harder edge? The future king had spoken. In the echo of the leaked letter and the firestorm that followed, senior royals scrambled to assess the damage not just to Anne's reputation, but to the family's cohesion. It was then that William stepped forward, not with outrage, but with strategy. Sources close to the palace revealed that he requested a private audience with Anne, not as her nephew, but as the next in line. What took place in that room remains officially undocumented, but whispers tell of a conversation charged with calm authority and careful conviction. William, who had long kept his distance from palace infighting, made his stance clear. The crown's survival demanded more than emotion, it required precision. And sometimes, precision meant standing firm, even when it fractured bloodlines. In recent years, William's presence behind royal decision-making has grown sharper, more defined. No longer just the heir apparent, he has become an active force shaping the monarchy's future. Insiders say that his alliance with Anne has strengthened not out of sentiment, but out of shared values. Both are known for their resilience, their disdain for drama, and their unwavering loyalty to the institution. Anne had acted on instinct, but William offered her validation. "You did what you had to," he was heard telling her. "I would have done the same." That alignment, however, didn't come without cost. Just a day after their meeting, William convened with King Charles in a private chamber, a closed-door discussion that reportedly lasted over 2 hours. The subject, public perception. The fear wasn't just about scandal, it was about a growing rift between the royal image of duty and the public's demand for empathy. Charles, ever the diplomat, leaned toward damage control. William, meanwhile, advocated silence and strength. The institution must not flinch. The next morning at Windsor Chapel, the air was heavy. Timothy stood 2 pews apart from William, his eyes forward, his demeanor controlled but cold. The tension was unmissable. Gone was the warm familiarity of shared royal service. What remained was a civil frost, a line drawn in silence. Catherine, ever the balancing force, offered quiet kindness to both sides. She didn't choose, she didn't need to. Her presence alone was a subtle call for grace. But the house was divided. Behind the smiles and nods, 2 camps had formed: those who believed in protecting the monarchy through tradition, and those who felt compassion must be its evolution. For now, the former held the reins. Anne stood reinforced. William had made his choice. As power shifted toward a new generation, one more twist emerged, and it threatened to unravel everything Anne had fought to protect. In the middle of the night, Timothy Laurence was seen quietly leaving a side entrance of Clarence's house. A source close to the family says he whispered to a royal valet, "I'm done." After decades of loyalty, had Timothy finally chosen himself and his family over the crown? The fracture was no longer silent. It was final. There was no formal statement, no press briefing, no official announcement. Just a black car, a closed door, and the absence of footsteps returning. For years, Timothy had stood just behind the line of royal power, supportive, invisible, unshakable. But something had broken. After the state dinner debacle, the leaked letter, and William's icy stare at chapel, he had endured in silence. Until now, his quiet departure wasn't a protest, it was surrender. The Crown had made its choice. So had he. Inside Clarence's house, aides were thrown into confusion. Anne had scheduled her day with military precision, never mentioning Timothy's absence. When asked about him by a senior staffer, she responded with a single word, unavailable. But those closest to her knew the signs, her voice tighter than usual, her gaze a little longer out the window, the kind of stillness that only comes when the storm has already passed, but left everything in pieces. Zara and Peter, Anne's children, reportedly reached out immediately, not to their stepfather but to their mother. In private texts, they pleaded for reconciliation. "He's been there through everything," Zara wrote, according to a palace insider. "You don't have to lose him to prove you're strong." But Anne didn't reply. She didn't have to. Her silence wasn't out of pride. It was grief buried beneath generations of royal conditioning. To show regret was to open a door she had spent years keeping bolted shut. Behind the scenes, the palace was thrown into turmoil. Timothy's name had quietly vanished from UPC. Oming engagements. Royal communications debated how to spin his absence, whether to use the word retreat, reflection, or say nothing at all. Ultimately, they chose omission. But the press noticed, and so did the public. Headlines began swirling. Is Anne alone? The Crown's quietest divorce. Duty over devotion. In truth, no one knew what to call it. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a separation. It was something colder, something harder to reverse. There were whispers of a temporary break, of Anne needing space, of Timothy seeking clarity. But those who understood Anne best knew better. This wasn't about time apart. This was about a line crossed, a wound too deep to stitch back together. And so, as the royal schedule marched on, she appeared in uniform, spoke in clipped tones, and smiled without warmth. The monarchy, once again, had preserved its image. But the final twist wasn't about who left whom, it was about what Anne did next, and how it changed the palace forever. In a move that stunned even the most senior courtiers, Princess Anne filed an internal directive. Timothy Laurence's family was to be permanently removed from all future royal invitations. No holidays, no ceremonies, no exceptions. It wasn't just an end, it was an erasure. The Iron Princess had spoken, and the echo would haunt the monarchy. The document was discreet but absolute, signed in Anne's firm hand and logged within the internal records of royal protocol. It did not require the king's co-signature, nor did it pass through public channels. It was binding, permanent. A clear message not just to Timothy's relatives, but to every corner of the Crown's inner circle. This was no pause. This was exile. The list of names excluded wasn't long, but it was specific. Those who once sat at Anne's private Christmas table. Those who had sipped champagne at family weddings. Those who had once considered Clarence's house a second home, now officially uninvited from royal life. Forever. The first sign of enforcement came silently. Anne's 75th birthday, long expected to be a major family celebration, was announced as a small private affair. Invitations were tightly restricted. Timothy's name, once present on every guest list by default, was now omitted. More glaringly, none of his family, no siblings, no nieces, no nephews were even mentioned. The media speculated, the public debated, but within the palace no one dared to ask why. They already knew. Royal watchers across the globe erupted. Commentators debated whether Anne had gone too far or not far enough. Supporters applauded her unflinching commitment to duty, calling her the last true enforcer of royal discipline. Detractors labelled the act cruel, accusing her of placing protocol above humanity. Yet Anne offered no defence, no elaboration, only that silence, the silence that had come to define her reign over her own private domain. Even Queen Camilla, whose own experience with public exile had made her a reluctant sympathiser in similar situations, was reportedly displeased. Aides say she quietly voiced her disapproval to Charles, suggesting a softening of the language in the directive. But Charles, already stretched thin by constitutional pressures, and a divided household, refused to intervene. "Anne knows what she's doing," he reportedly said. "She always has." And so, the directive stood untouched. Beneath Anne's rigid posture, the emotional toll quietly mounted. Those closest to her saw the change. Her eyes lingered a bit longer on portraits. Her responses grew shorter, less patient. She carried on because she always does, but something had fractured. And, unlike other royal wounds, this one had no ceremonial balm, no handshake, no reconciliation, only distance and silence. What this meant for the future was undeniable. The divide was no longer just between Anne and Timothy, it was institutional. The monarchy had once again chosen power over peace, sending a message to the world that loyalty was not just expected, it was enforced. The gates to royal life had closed for good on a name that once stood just behind the curtain of power. This may be the end of a family bond, but it's the beginning of a new royal era, forged in fire, silence, and power. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.